Today I will take a look at this FMS Super Cub PA-18 1.3 meter wingspan RC airplane. So I mean they have like three sizes, 540 really tiny one. They had like the 1.7 then, which have been available for quite some time, and now this in between like 1.3 meter wingspan RC airplane. So let's first watch a few steps then on how to build this one together. First step is to connect the tail sections. So you have this cable which you have to fiddle with. So not only the cable, you also have a spar then that goes through the rear part into the main part. So it's a little bit fiddly just to get all the cables in place. And then finally just put this tube in. And you have to straighten the cables from the inside. And just put it together. This section then is held by two screws, one from the bottom and one from the top. FMS uses these heads with 2mm hex heads, which is really great. Then you have the main wing, you have a long spar. And then the same thing here, you have cables for the LED lights, for the aileron, for the flaps. Put this into the hole and somehow just grab them inside of the fuse, and so no cable is squeezed, and then put this wing half all the way in. To hold the wing then you have two screws. These are the same type of screw used on all parts on this airplane, so you have like these nicely hex heads then. Same thing on the other side. So I wish that they had just had this quick connector from the 1.7 meter. It would have been made my life a lot easier. And the same thing here, you have two screws just to hold everything in place. And on the rear section you have the two halves spar. You put these in, and there is a quick release and quick connect system. So just shove this together, and on the other side you have this quick release and quick connect mechanism. As far as the landing gear, you have all metal parts. They slide in really easy, and then you have plastic pieces and the same screws that used on the wing then, just to secure these mounting points. So 4 screws for the front section, and then on the rear section you use the wing struts then, which is just a holder for the landing gears and also for the wing struts. There are 2 screws on each side to hold these strut and landing gear plastic pieces then. It's really nice to have these hex heads and to screw in, just to have a good grip all over. And to the rear you have the mount then for the float, and there are plastic pieces included. You have these springs then, just hook up really easy. They are really springy. And you have these braces then for the struts. You have to press quite hard just to get them in. 2 for each wing half. And then you have the end of the wing struts held by these kind of pins. You just use a plier to shove them in. And then when you bound the RC airplane and just center the servo with your TX, you just adjust the elevator. And when you're satisfied it, you use a ball link plier just to put this in place. You have to squeeze quite hard just to get them in. Last thing, you have the prop and spinner. So you should actually do all the TX setup and have this step as the last step. There's a rear
plastic piece, the prop, middle piece, and then you have the cone. You don't need any tools, just to assemble the prop.
I think this plane goes together fairly simple. There's only kind of this cable fiddling which you have to do, and then for the wing halves and also for the rear section where you have this split tail. So I would very much prefer to have like the quick connector that is in the 1.7. It's a really nicely done solution. I also think that on the rear section then you have the stabilizer, and it's held by this click system, so it's a quick release one. But just for confidence, I would much more have preferred just to have 2 screws to screw in the rear stabilizer then. I think that the greatest thing about this RC plane might be the landing gears, because I mean they are almost just as similar as the 1.7 then, really sturdy all metal gear, and I honestly cannot see these landing gears breaking unless you just super crash this RC plane. And the wheels are also air-filled, squishy, so it's a really good thing, even better than the 1.7, I would say. So this one does come with a reflex gyro, which just works fine, but just to reduce the cable mess inside, I ripped it and I put in Spektrum AR631 receiver. And then I could just take advantage of everything on this RC plane. I did also swap the EC inside just because I had an Avian 45 amp in my toolbox. So the stock EC then, it's a 40 amp, and it does support up to 4S batteries. And it does also support reverse thrust, which is useful mostly when you have floats on an RC plane. But then you have to have like a 7-channel receiver in this RC plane, and I just want to make a simple electronic solution on this one. So that's why I picked these components then. But I mean, I just want to get this one up in there and see if it flies as good as the 1.7. So let's head outside and fly this PA-18. It's a really beautiful day today. Hardly any wind. Some clouds. It's perfect to get this plane flying then. As you can hear, I have telemetry warnings from the ESC then, the Avian 45 amp I put in this RC plane. You can just push this one pretty hard, but also as you can hear, the ESC doesn't really like when I push this RC plane. But it does feature a really nice agility just when you go around flying like this and push it. You can also fly slow, well controlled. You can tilt the RC plane and it won't really have any tendency to drop. I think it's just as forgiving as the 1.7 meter PA-18 then. Just using a little bit of more power when I turn, just to avoid the plane that's dropping. Now this plane does feature a really good effective rudder authority. The same thing with the elevator authority. So the only thing lacking, in my opinion, then is aileron, so it doesn't roll fast. Really have to have a good speed to have this one rolling in a good and powerful way.
Flaps.
And with my flap to elevator mix, I have no ballooning really. And as these flaps then, when you have like full flaps, they are more like 90-degree down. So I have almost like 30% elevator mix for full flaps and around 20 for half flaps. So flying low and controlled, it's no problem. I mean, even though I'm banking and just keeping speed up a little bit. It doesn't want to drop.
Flaps up.
Just a few minor wind gusts. So just like that, I mean, I'll have to push the RC airplane to have a nice roll. And you can also hear by the avian EC alarm then that it doesn't really like the combination then of the when I push this on this motor and the prop. So it might be a good idea to actually try the same prop that I've used on my FMS Ranger 1200mm. It's an APC electric 11x7, which in my experience they are more effective than these kind of stock props and FMS do provide their RC airplanes with. And I would also find it interesting if I would fly this one on 4S battery, because I know that the engine can take it. I wouldn't do too many flights, but you can, as you see there, I just have to struggle to get this plane to roll. I've also tried just to swap off the EC to put in the original FMS EC then, to see if that makes any difference. Because I think these alarms are just, I mean, they're so annoying. And honestly, I couldn't turn them off with this combination of the AR631 then and the avian, so let's get it down then. Very smooth, very well behaved RC airplane when it comes to takeoff and landings. It's overall a good flying RC airplane.
Now the big question is, do I think that this 1.3 meter is as good as the 1.7? And the short answer is no, because I think that on the 1.7 then, it runs on 4S batteries and you have more power to pull through things. I mean, I never feel the lack of power on the 1.7, but with this 1.3 that runs on 3S batteries, I mean, when I just do things like rolls, for instance, they are not as well controlled and as powerful as on the 1.7. So this plane does actually struggle if you just go up and you want to have like a nice roll. So it's not really close to the 1.7 then in that aspect. But other than that, I think it just handles more or less just as good as the 1.7. It's a great slow flying RC airplane with flaps or without flaps. It lands super easy, it just takes off super easy. So certainly a viable option then to the 1.7, and this one is smaller of course. But to me, I prefer the 1.7. I think it's a much more fun RC airplane to fly. Then I could also compare this one to the Hobbyzone Carbon Cub S2, which is a similar sized RC airplane. And now it becomes a little bit interesting because the Carbon Cub S2 doesn't come with flaps in stock configuration, doesn't come with LED lights. So in my opinion, this FMS PA-18 is much better than the Carbon Cub S2. Although, I mean, the Carbon Cub S2 does fly really well, but I think the features and also the build on this RC airplane is much better than the Carbon Cub S2. I could also compare this one to the Clipwing Cub then from E-flite, which is a 1.2 meter wingspan RC airplane. And in comparison, I mean, the Clipwing Cub is a really nicely aerobatic RC airplane. It's discontinuous, so you cannot purchase it. But still, and I can also compare this one to the FMS J3 Cub, the 1.4 meter wingspan, and also the Hobby King J3 Swiss, 1.4 meter. And I think that the big advantage then compared to these two RC airplanes is that this one does handle slow flying much better, and the landing gear construction on this RC airplane is just super nice. You can, I think you can take off and land on almost any surface. So that's the short comparison then to some other RC airplanes. And if I would also compare this one just to the Arrows Bigfoot, which is a similar sized RC airplane. The Bigfoot, of course, resembles more like a Cessna 150, and this is a Cub RC airplane. But the Arrows than Bigfoot is a really agile and fun RC airplane, and also flies really well slow. So, I mean, of course, it's not a Cub, but I just had to make the comparison because I really like the Arrows Bigfoot. I think it's a fantastic RC airplane. But there's something really nice about this one. It's a lightweight RC airplane. It does have, I mean, the features you want in an RC airplane, like flaps and LED lights, and I mean a good prop sound to it. Overall, a good performance, but just not too agile when it comes to rolls and such. But surely a really nice one, and even for a beginner, I think you will be really happy with this RC airplane.